Welcome to On Texas Football. Time for Bingham's Bourbon's breakdown for this game against Michigan coming up tomorrow. Longhorns still favored in this game by 7.5 points. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Rod Babers and CJ Vogel. Let's break it down for folks. Let's start with the Texas offense, Rod, against this Michigan defense. Arch Manning and the fellows are going to be without Trey Wisner, but everybody else is playing in the bowl game on offense, at least. Michigan's defense has been what's carried them much of this year. Wink Martindale is the defensive coordinator for them. What is your breakdown of the Texas offense versus the Michigan defense?
Yes, interesting matchup. I like the fact that Texas has a lot of its proven commodities and their identity coming, back in this game, other than obviously Trey Wisner, who decided to hit the portal. What you need to know about Michigan is what everybody already knows about Wink Martindale. He wants to bring the blitz, top 5 blitz rate in all of college football. So with the big storylines, how does Arch Manning handle the blitz? And actually, he's been basically a top 20 quarterback overall, if you look at it, versus the blitz in the Power 4. This game, it'd be great if he could elevate himself to being a top 10 quarterback versus the blitz. Because if I'm Wink Martindale, I'm coming after Texas with the blitz. And the reason why is because not only has the offensive line had struggles in pass protection, but much better, obviously, toward the end of the year, but the running backs, we know they are bereft of veteran proven commodities at the running back position, and I would test to see if those guys can pass protect. So I would bring extra numbers early and often to see if those Texas running backs know how to pass protect. I think that's something that you'll see them have to deal with. And also, I think this game plan for Texas may be similar to the game plan they had versus Michigan 2 years ago in 2024. Now, remember, what were they doing in that game, gentlemen? They were attacking the edges, right? Attacking the edges, getting to the perimeter as much as they could. Swing screens, they moved the pocket. Of course, Texas running the outside zone. I think similarly, you want to attack the edges this year as well, because Michigan's going to be missing their 2 best edge defenders. They're going to be missing Derek Moore and Bourbon. Both of those guys accounting for 14 of their 28 sacks. So if you're Texas in 2024, you were avoiding the best D-tackle duo in college football, so you were attacking the edges. This year, in this matchup, I think you attack the edges for a different reason. That's the best, or at least the best matchup for you. I think that's where Michigan's going to be the most vulnerable in this game versus Texas. So I think that's where you'll see Texas try to attack, especially if they can do it in the run game. But I don't expect Texas to be able to run the football very well. Remember, in that Michigan game, you take out that Ryan Wingo 50-plus yarder in 2024, guys, they're averaging less than 4 yards per rush. Texas did it with the quick passing game. When you're going up against a team that wants to bring the blitz, the quick passing game can help you, and also the screen game can help you. And Texas had a lot of screens in that game versus Michigan 2 years ago. I think you'll see that be a big factor as well.
Rod, thank you for that. I would say they are going to be green at running back, to your point, with James Simon, expected to get a lot of time, as well as Christian Clark, Michael Terry moving over that way. CJ, you heard Rod's breakdown there. You have anything to add?
Yeah, I think from a Texas perspective, the advantage comes in the passing game, right? No Derek Moore, no Jayshon Barham, as you mentioned, Rod. Those were the 2 leading pressure getters for the Michigan defense by quite a margin, right? 41 for Moore, 21 for Barham. TJ Guy is 3rd for Michigan. He has 17. Well, 17 is all right, but over 12 games, it doesn't put a lot of fear in you, right? And what I mean by that is Texas has 6 players with 17 or more pressures this year. So he would be tied for 6th if this was a comparison of the 2 teams between the 2. So ultimately, with the full offensive line for Texas playing in this game, pass protection should be a plus. But as we've talked about, and with as green of a running back room Texas has, why should we sit here and pretend that the running game will be something that Texas can lean on? I think if you're Texas, I mean, sure, you want to see what a James Simon or a Christian Clark or a Michael Terry can do, but ultimately, if you're going to win this game, it's going to be with Arch Manning and those wide receivers. Jack injuries and the tight ends as well will get involved. But more than anything, I wonder if it comes down to getting pressure on the quarterback, can Michigan do that with 3 or 4 without sacrificing bodies in the back end? Right now, I don't know. I don't think so.
Let me ask you all this. I mentioned Trey Wisner as being out in this game. I forgot about DeAndre Moore. Also, neglected to mention him. You think that changes anything, like with Dalen McCutcheon in the slot more, CJ or Rod?
I mean, that's interesting because, I mean, your veteran receivers, if you're talking about a team that's going to be blitz happy, then the site adjustments by the wide receivers have got to be big. I think now, guys like Parker Livingston and Ryan Wingo have been with Arch long enough, so those guys should be well adjusted there. But yes, to your point, if you're going to throw out Emmett Mosley also, I guess he has less experience than those other guys, but he's done really well. If you're throwing in a young wide receiver in that circle of trust, maybe Dalen McCutcheon, could you have some issues there? One thing you want to look at as well, Michigan does a lot of things creatively on the back end with disguise. They're actually one of the most diverse defenses in terms of coverages out there in all of college football. They have at least 10% rate of usage in 5 different coverages. To give you a little perspective on that, Texas only has 3 different coverages where they have at least a 10% rate of usage. And most of that, guys, is cover 3 and cover 1. That's like 70% of Texas coverages right there. Michigan, very diverse in terms of variety. They're going to throw at Texas with the blitz and the pressure packages, along with some diverse looks on the back end with disguise. So you got to make sure that the quarterback and the wide receivers are on the same page there. So I expect Jack injuries, in my opinion, could have a big game in this game. You're looking for matchup advantages, be against those safeties and potentially the linebackers who had a big game versus Michigan 2 years ago. Gunnar Helm, baby, because that's a matchup advantage that Texas knew they could take advantage of.
Let me ask y'all this, and Rod, particularly you, because you've always been high on Wink Martindale, the defense coordinator for Michigan. I remember going back to 2 years ago when we were talking about going up to Michigan and playing them. The question I have, it felt like Wink Martindale got beaten up a little bit by Steve Sarkisian in that game in Ann Arbor. He was kind of, I don't know about outfoxed, but Texas certainly came out of the game or out of the gates with a clear plan and executed it. And it felt like it took Michigan by surprise. If Wink Martindale, as we think, is a competitor, he's probably going to be lying in wait this time with something for Sark. You agree with that?
Yeah, it would be something to try to neutralize the quick passing game. If you look at defense that are similar to what schematically, conceptually to what Michigan's going to do, it's probably Oklahoma and Vanderbilt. Really high blitz rates, really high rates of zone coverage as well, and then very diverse coverage matrix. If you're talking about playing a lot of different coverages. And so that's the kind of, if you look at those games, what did Texas do? Got the ball out quickly. I think there were 20 screens between that Oklahoma and that Vanderbilt game. 2.7 and 2.5 was the average time to throw for Arch in those games. So the ball was out very quickly in those matchups to get him in a rhythm and to make sure that you were able to neutralize the pass rush with a quick passing game. That's something that Texas did against Michigan, right? They got the ball out really quickly, swing screens on the ass to Jaden Blue and to the wide receivers. And then ultimately, I think for Michigan, it caught them off guard. Texas turned it into a track meet and they wanted to have a fight. And I think in this game, similarly, you don't want to just get into a fist fight with Michigan. You want to turn this thing into a track meet because your speed on the outside can exploit, I think, some of the vulnerabilities of Michigan conceptually and schematically.
Gotcha. All right. We're going to talk about the Texas defense against the Michigan offense first. But before we do that, Rob, will you tell folks about our sponsor, Bingham's Bourbon?
Oh, no question. Thank you to our friends over at Bingham's Bourbon. This episode of On Texas Football brought to you by Bingham's Bourbon, created by Grammy and Oscar-winning artist Ryan Bingham. For years, Ryan turned down offers to just put his name on a bottle. No, instead, he insisted he wanted a bourbon he could be proud of, one that stayed true to his Texas roots and where the music comes from. That's why he built Bingham's from the ground up, a Texas-certified whiskey made with 100% Texas-grown grains, distilled and aged in the searing Texas climate for a bold, unmistakable flavor. From the hands of local Texas farmers to the barrel to the glass, every drop is a tribute to the land, the craft, and the people who shape it. Bingham's Bourbon, proof that Texas makes a damn good bourbon, available now across the great state of Texas, and you can find details at binghamspirits.com. That's binghamspirits.com.
CJ Vogel, Texas defense, without a defensive coordinator, without 7 starters tomorrow. Your thoughts on this game for the Longhorns going up against frankly, a Michigan offense that's without its coordinator as well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this all comes down to if Texas can stop the run for me. And look, you're down a number of linebackers already, right? No Trey Moore, no Leon Lafau, Anthony Hill off to the NFL as well. We know that Texas is starting to move some different bodies to that linebacking unit, right? Jordan Johnson-Rubel's gotten some run. We saw Monday afternoon, Colin Simmons also got some burn as a true linebacker in that second unit. If Texas can't stop the run, this is going to be a long day for them. Fortunately, we believe that Texas will be very close to 100% with its defensive linemen and its edge room outside of Ethan Burke, obviously. So that's encouraging. Beyond that, you gotta force Bryce Underwood to throw the football, and that's not what they want to do. He's only thrown for more than 250 yards in a single game 3 times this year. That's New Mexico in the season opener, Wisconsin and Northwestern. I'll tell you this, Wisconsin and Northwestern, not necessarily known for their stout defenses this year as well. So that's what they want to do. They want to run the football. They're top 20 in 10-plus rushing yards, rushing plays, top 20 in 20-plus rushing plays. They're top 10 and 5.5 yards per carry as well. You see what they want to do. Jordan Marshall banged up with a shoulder. He's expected to be the bell cow this upcoming Wednesday as well. But ultimately, it just comes down to as simple as that. Texas, can you stop the run? They did a fine job of that when they made the trip to Ann Arbor. But, hey, you did so with a number of NFL-level guys in that front seven. Now you don't have the luxury of playing with those guys more so than that. I will say this, and this is kind of where I want to end it on. Johnny Nansen calling plays is really intriguing.
Yeah.
Because I think what we saw when he came over from Arizona is a lot of that exotic second-level pressure is basically what he hung his hat on. You know, he had a linebacker at Arizona at the time right before he left who had 9 sacks and very rarely ever lined up on the line of scrimmage or at the edge rushing position. To me, if he's using Colin Simmons at any point from the second level or even a Brad Spence, that should be a signal for anybody on that Michigan sideline saying – he's probably coming. So that's going to be really interesting to see if obvious passing situations, just how exotic do we see Johnny Nansen get in this game? It's going to be interesting.
I'd like to see Colin Simmons get a couple more before his season is out here. Hey, Rod, one of the things I asked the folks on Coffee and Football yesterday is, and I talked to Marcus Myers about this a little bit, is Texas's response when Michigan goes with 3 tight ends.
Yeah,
because they will do that. They'll go heavy. And Texas, as we know, really only have 2 linebackers right now with much experience in Anthony Smith and Brad Spence. And Brad Spence didn't play linebacker much at all this season. He actually played more edge.
Yep.
How big of a what's the best way to put it? Disadvantage does that make it for Texas if Michigan can sit there and just run it down their throat with, a lack of linebacker play?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And that they're going to test it, right? And they'd be fools not to, because it fits their DNA and their identity, and it directly targets a weakness for Texas. Yep. And one thing I think is interesting about basically when they add these extra tight ends, they're just adding extra gaps, guys. They're adding extra gaps that the defense has to account for. And if you have inexperienced linebackers who are not, you should see it, these guys can overrun a gap. Sometimes you can have multiple guys in the gap because they don't have gap integrity. Remember the Will Muschamp banging the board, gap control, right? Because that's important. That's why Michigan, I believe they have 8 50-plus yard runs on the season, and a few of those are from those heavy packages you're talking about. Remember that one they broke against Oklahoma? Was it that heavy package? And it's also because a gap unaccounted for when they add those extra gaps. If I'm Texas, I think one thing you're fortunate to have is that you haven't had a ton of D tackle, bad news at D tackle. So you should have at least 3 D tackles you trust out there. I wouldn't doubt that you see Texas counter with a 40 personnel package. 40 personnel just means you got your 4 DBs in there instead of 5. So you're going to devote 7 guys to the front. Make that 3 D tackle. Remember that 3 D tackle package? Sorry versus Michigan, as a matter of fact. A couple years ago, 3 legitimate D tackles. And then you could have a stand-up overhang edge and a Colin Simmons and a Lance Jackson. And then you could have Anthony Smith and Brad Spence as your kind of inside linebackers and present a true 3-4, but a heavier 3-4 with 3 D tackles there. And hell, I still think about bringing Jelani down, right? That's because I don't fear the Michigan passing. If Michigan wants to beat me passing the football, Thank the Lord. So if I'm Texas, I would present heavy fronts like that defensively and say, we're going to give you the pass. Can you, if you can beat our guys, because yes, I think Andrew Morse is a really good player. I think he leads them in explosive plays. He's got 15 explosive receptions on season, 641 yards, which is a freshman record, by the way. Think about that at Michigan. So they all want to throw the football. I would force them into doing something they don't want to do. I would give them favorable matchups on in the passing game and on the outside, because I don't know if Brad Underwood can hit it, and I don't know if they can just beat your guys on the outside. I would stack the box to let them know, no, we're not giving up. But if you stack the box, you better have gap integrity, because that's how they pop it. If a guy overshoots a gap, or a guy, you have two players in the gap, or you don't have sound gap control, that's how they'll pop one of those big runs on you. So I would stack it. I would stack it with 3D tackles too.
Interesting. All right, Rod, CJ, before we get to our score prediction, I want to ask you about special teams. CJ and I were out at practice yesterday, and Dalen McCutcheon was actually returning punts. But that was because Ryan Niblett was working as a gunner on special teams. The thought process here, Texas should have a sizable advantage on special teams. What do you think, CJ?
Yeah, excuse me, absolutely. Michigan is basically a non-factor in the return game. They don't have a single punt return this year over 20 yards. They only have one kickoff return this year over 20 yards. That, of course, has been Ryan Niblett's music for Texas, right? We've seen him win games for Texas or put them in positions to extend leads late in ball games because of what he can do in the return game. If it's Dalen McCutcheon as well, I think that's another very capable return man in that same sense. So that's one of the things I'm looking at. Do they even give the return men a shot? Because that right now lends very heavily to the Texas Longhorns in terms of having an advantage in the special teams unit. Michigan just basically says, just get us the ball where we can start possessions, pick kind of a hash, and get going from there.
Will be the last game, by the way, for Longhorns. Jack Boomeister, the punter that transferred in from Utah by way of Australia, as well as Mason Shipley, the Liberty Hill native that spent time at Texas State most recently. That it will be their final two games. All right, let's get to the score prediction side of things. I'm going to start. I'm going 20-17 Longhorns. I think that both teams are going to have some issues on offense in this game. I think the defenses might be a little bit ahead of the offense. I mean, we got a young quarterback, even though he started all year at Michigan right now, that's going to be playing a Texas front that should be fairly active. And I think that Texas, without DeAndre Moore, without Trey Weiser in that run game, still kind of looking for what they can be, despite the top two pass rushers for Michigan not competing in this game. I'm going to go 2017 Longhorns. CJ, what are you doing?
Yeah, this is a tough one for me because, look, I think Texas won't be able to run the football, and I think Michigan will be able to run it almost at will. So what breaks? Is it Texas's pass protection that should give Arch a lot of time? Well, we'll have to wait and see. But ultimately, I think that will be the case given Michigan's top two pass rushers will not be active in this game. If that's the case, Texas should be able to throw the football on Michigan. I actually think it's a pretty high-scoring game given the opt-outs and the starters not playing in this game for the Texas defense. And on top of that, you should have time to throw the football for Arch. I have 31-27 for Texas. That feels very high-scoring considering Michigan probably try to slow down the game, extend possessions, with the run game. But ultimately, look for some explosives, some deep shots with Arch. I think that's going to be kind of the MO for Texas in this game.
Rod B?
No, that's good. Yeah, unfortunately, I do. I think Texas may give up some just because of the inexperience, right? You don't have you're just missing so much veteran leadership. The communication center right there between Michael Taft and Anthony Hill, and also Trey Moore's one of your veterans. So I just figure you may just end up giving up something just because of the lack of veteran experience there. I'm going to go with Texas to win, though. I'm going with Texas to win because I do like that matchup of Texas passing game versus a Michigan pass defense without their best pass rushers, as CJ brought up. So I'll go Texas 27-23. I want to say, what's the number? Isn't Texas favored by like 7 or a touchdown?
7.5 as of today.
Say Texas covered there, and I'm like, nah, I don't want to go there. So I'll say they keep it within the number. Both of these, I have no idea. Both of these programs dealing with, kind of Michigan's got their own trauma they're dealing with. And then Texas has so many distractions right now with all the guys leaving and losing a lot of leadership. So not really sure what's going to happen, but I'll trust Texas did grow up this season. And that's what we saw, maturity. Maturity means you come out here and you can win this game.
Interesting. All right. Thanks again to our friend Ryan Bingham over at Bingham's Bourbon. They've sponsored the breakdown all year long. Make sure you check them out. Again, Bingham's Bourbon. It can be found across the great state of Texas at various spots. For CJ Vogel, as well as Rod Babers and our producer, Matt Hutchison, you guys have a good one. Hook 'em horns.
Hook 'em.